Somebody in this room has been walking, but you've been walking without direction. You've been moving, but not advancing. You've been busy, but not becoming. But when you align your steps with God's vision, when your feet start following His plan, doors that were closed begin to open. Mountains that looked impossible begin to move, and the very path that was once filled with confusion becomes clear. Because hear me when I say this, God doesn't just want you to move, He wants you to move in sync with His purpose. You can't walk into your destiny if you're dancing to the rhythm of your own beat. Somebody shout, "Order my steps, Lord." When we talk about aligning our steps with God's vision, we have to start with understanding that divine alignment always comes before divine assignment. You cannot fully walk in what God has called you to do until your life, your will, and your priorities are aligned with His divine direction. Too many of us want to jump straight into the assignment. We want the platform, the influence, the success, the manifestation, but we have not allowed God to align our steps, our thoughts, and our hearts with His will. Alignment is not glamorous. It's not loud. It's not public. It's quiet. It's internal. It's the season when God is adjusting, pruning, and fine. Tune in everything inside you so that when He releases you into your assignment, you don't self-destruct under the weight of it. Divine alignment means coming into agreement with heaven's plan for your life. It means letting go of your own agenda, even when it looks good, even when it makes sense to you. Because sometimes what seems logical to you is not aligned with what God has ordained for you. You can have all the talent in the world, but if it's not aligned with purpose, it will only take you so far. Alignment is what gives power to your assignment. Without alignment, the assignment becomes a burden instead of a blessing. Think of a car that's out of alignment. You can have a full tank of gas. You can press the accelerator, but the steering will pull you off course. You'll feel resistance. You'll drift into lanes you were never meant to be in. And if you keep driving like that, eventually you'll wear out your tires and damage your vehicle. That's what happens when we try to move in life without being aligned with God's direction. We start drifting into relationships that drain us, opportunities that distract us, and decisions that derail us. We find ourselves working hard but going nowhere, moving fast but without fulfillment. Alignment corrects the drift. It keeps your spirit steady when life starts to pull you in the wrong direction. God's alignment is not always comfortable, but it's always necessary. Sometimes He has to close doors you thought you needed. Sometimes He has to remove people you thought you couldn't live without. Sometimes He has to slow you down when you're ready to run or speed you up when you'd rather wait. Alignment is not about convenience, it's about obedience. It's about saying, "Lord, I trust you enough to let you set the pace and the path." When you surrender to His process, He starts to shape your desires to match His will. He aligns your heart so that your yes becomes genuine, your faith becomes firm, and your steps become ordered. Before David ever became king, he spent years in alignment. God anointed him long before He appointed him. The oil came early, but the throne came later. Why? Because David had to go through seasons of shaping, testing, and alignment. He had to learn how to lead in the field before he could lead from the palace. If God had given him the crown before the character, the throne would have crushed him. The same is true for us. God aligns us so that when we reach our divine assignment, we can carry it with grace, humility, and power. Sometimes alignment looks like isolation. God will pull you away from people, places, and patterns that are no longer serving your destiny. It's not punishment, it's preparation. You're not being left behind, you're being positioned. Don't mistake hiddenness for abandonment. God hides you when he's refining you. He shields you from distractions and demands so he can develop you in the dark. That's alignment. When you're in alignment with God, you start to notice divine timing working in your favor. Opportunities that used to intimidate you suddenly fit. Conversations open doors. Peace confirms direction. You stop chasing and you start flowing. You don't have to manipulate outcomes because God is already orchestrating the results. Alignment brings divine rhythm. Your steps start matching heaven's beat. But here's the challenge. Alignment requires constant surrender. It's not a one-time event. It's a daily decision. Every morning you have to say, Lord, align my thoughts, align my motives, align my emotions, align my words, because misalignment can happen subtly through pride, through fear, through impatience. The moment you start thinking you know better than God, you start drifting. But the beauty of grace is that alignment is always one prayer away. One moment of humility can bring you back into step with his plan. When you live in divine alignment, even your mistakes become part of the mission. God knows how to use detours to bring you back on course. What the enemy meant for distraction, God turns into direction. What you thought was delay becomes development. You start realizing that everything that didn't work out was really working together for your good. Divine alignment is the posture of purpose. It's the spiritual position that allows heaven to trust you with more. God is not looking for perfection. He's looking for alignment. He's looking for people whose hearts are tuned to his frequency, who can hear his whisper and respond without hesitation. When you are aligned, you move differently. You pray differently. You speak differently. You stop asking, Lord, bless what I'm doing, and start saying, Lord, let me do what you're blessing. So if you feel like your life is in a holding pattern right now, maybe God is aligning you. Maybe he's recalibrating your direction so your assignment won't destroy you. Don't rush the process. Let him tune your steps to his rhythm, because once you're aligned, there's no devil, no detour, and no delay that can stop the divine assignment God has for your life. Divine alignment always precedes divine assignment. Before he sends you, he settles you. Before he releases you, he refines you. Before he promotes you, he positions you. When your heart is aligned with his will, your destiny becomes inevitable. And when your steps are ordered by God, even your missteps turn into miracles. Vision without obedience leads to frustration. You can have a dream so big it keeps you up at night. But if you're not willing to obey the one who gave it to you, that dream will remain a picture in your imagination instead of a reality in your life. God doesn't just give vision, he gives instructions. And the distance between the vision and its fulfillment is measured by how well you obey what he told you to do. Obedience is the bridge that carries you from revelation to manifestation. Many people receive a glimpse of what God wants to do in their lives. They see the business, the ministry, the family, the purpose, but they stop there. They get excited about the vision, but resist the instructions. God shows them the what, but they struggle with the how. The truth is, vision without obedience will always lead to frustration, because you'll be trying to build something divine using human blueprints. You'll see where you're supposed to go, but every step feels like resistance because you're trying to lead where you were meant to follow. Obedience is not about understanding every detail. It's about trusting every word that comes from God's mouth. When God gives you a command, he's not asking for your opinion. He's inviting your participation. The moment you obey, you activate the process that brings the vision to life. But when you delay obedience, you delay destiny. Every time you say, I'll do it later, you add another layer of frustration to your journey. God doesn't bless potential obedience. He blesses immediate obedience. Look at the story of Noah. God gave Noah a vision of a flood and an ark. But the vision alone didn't save his family. Obedience did. Noah followed God's detailed instructions step by step, even when it made no sense. It had never rained like that before, yet he obeyed. People mocked him, questioned him, doubted him. But he kept building because obedience matters more than approval. And when the rain came, it was obedience, not opinion, that kept him afloat. That's what many of us miss. We want God to show us the whole picture before we take the first step. But God often gives instructions that seem incomplete because He's testing our trust. He wants to see if you'll obey even when it doesn't make sense. Abraham was told to leave his homeland and go to a place I will show you. God didn't give him the coordinates. He gave him a command. And it was only after Abraham obeyed that God began to unfold the full vision. Obedience unlocks revelation. Some of us are praying for more clarity when God is waiting for more compliance. Disobedience creates confusion. It opens the door to frustration because you're trying to force progress without divine permission. You can't expect heavenly results while ignoring heavenly instructions. Many people are frustrated not because the vision is wrong, but because the method is. They're doing God's will in their own way. But partial obedience is still disobedience. If God told you to go left and you go halfway left, you're still out of alignment. And when you're out of alignment, you start blaming people, timing, or even God for what your lack of obedience caused. Obedience doesn't always feel rewarding in the beginning. It can feel like sacrifice. It can look like loss. But what you give up in the moment, God restores in multiplication. The woman at Zarephath had only a handful of flour and a little oil, but when she obeyed the prophet Elijah and made him bread first, her obedience turned scarcity into overflow. She didn't wait until she had abundance to obey. She obeyed in lack, and that obedience created abundance. Vision without obedience keeps you in scarcity, but obedience activates supernatural supply. Sometimes obedience will lead you in uncomfortable places. God might tell you to forgive someone who hurt you deeply, to leave a job that pays well, to sow into something when you feel empty. But obedience isn't about comfort. It's about covenant. It's saying, Lord, I trust that you see what I can't see. Every act of obedience plants a seed that eventually produces fruit in your destiny. The problem is many people quit watering that seed too early because they confuse delay with denial. Just because the fruit hasn't shown up yet doesn't mean your obedience didn't work. There will be seasons when God's instructions seem silent. You obey, but you don't see results. You pray, but doors don't open. You give, but nothing multiplies. That's when obedience turns into endurance. Faith-filled obedience keeps walking even when sight can't confirm the outcome. The children of Israel marched around the walls of Jericho for 6 days without a single sign that anything was changing. But on the 7th day, their obedience met divine timing and the walls came crashing down. Don't give up on the 7th day. Don't stop obeying just because you haven't seen movement yet. Obedience and vision are two sides of the same coin. Vision shows you where God wants to take you. Obedience shows Him He can trust you to get there. God won't release what your character can't carry. He'll test your obedience in the small things before He entrusts you with greater. If you can't follow simple instructions, you can't manage divine vision. Every command from God, no matter how small, prepares you for the larger calling He has waiting. The most frustrated believer is the one who knows what God wants but refuses to do what God says. They carry the weight of divine potential, but lack the release that comes through obedience. You can't pray your way around what only obedience can unlock. You can't substitute worship for obedience or replace sacrifice for submission. God said, to obey is better than sacrifice. Obedience proves that you value His will above your own preferences. When you align obedience with vision, frustration gives way to fulfillment. The same vision that once burdened you begins to bless you. Things start to move with grace and ease because heaven responds to obedience. You no longer chase opportunities, they find you. You no longer fear the future because you trust the one who holds it. So if you're feeling stuck, maybe the issue isn't your vision, it's your obedience. Go back to the last thing God told you to do. Finish the instruction He gave you. Your breakthrough is often hidden in your last act of obedience. Because vision without obedience leads to frustration, but vision followed by obedience leads to fruitfulness. And when your obedience meets God's vision, destiny becomes unstoppable. Every step counts when it's ordered by God. We often underestimate the power of one small act of obedience, one quiet prayer, one right decision made in the middle of uncertainty. But when your steps are ordered by the Lord, there is no such thing as a wasted move. Every detour, every delay, every step forward, and even every step backward becomes part of the divine choreography of your destiny. God never wastes a step. He uses each one to guide you closer to His purpose. Sometimes we think we have to make giant leaps of faith to please God, but He delights in the small, consistent steps of trust. The psalmist said, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in His way. That means God doesn't just plan the destination. He's involved in every detail along the way. He's not only concerned with where you end up, but how you get there. Every step matters because every step shapes you. When God orders your steps, even the seasons that seem insignificant have purpose. There are no random days in a life led by divine direction. The moments you thought were detours were actually part of the design. The people you met by accident were divine connections. The job you hated was teaching you discipline for the next level. The pain you endured was building endurance for your promise. You may not see it now, but every step is connected. God is weaving your journey like a tapestry. Threads that seem scattered up close form a masterpiece when you step back and look at the whole picture. The problem is we often get impatient. We want to see the full staircase before we take the first step. But God reveals destiny one step at a time. He orders your steps, not your jumps. He doesn't show you everything at once because if He did, you'd either run too fast or give up too soon. The process is designed to keep you dependent on Him. Each step builds your faith for the next. Each step teaches you something you'll need when you reach your destination. Think about the Israelites leaving Egypt. God didn't give them a straight route to the promised land. He led them through the wilderness on purpose. Each step was strategic. Each camp, each obstacle, each test was ordered to prepare them for the promise. The wilderness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. They had to learn how to trust God's direction before they could handle His destination. The same is true for us. God uses the journey to develop the character that can sustain the calling. When you walk in step with God, timing becomes just as important as direction. You can be walking the right path, but at the wrong pace. If you run ahead of God, you'll miss the grace meant to carry you. If you lag behind, you'll miss divine moments of opportunity. Walking with God means staying sensitive to His rhythm, knowing when to move, when to pause, when to wait, and when to war. The Spirit of God is your internal GPS, constantly recalibrating your route when life takes unexpected turns. And even when you feel lost, he knows exactly where you are. Sometimes the steps God orders don't make sense in the moment. He may lead you into a place that looks smaller than your potential, or into a season that feels still when you're ready for motion. But God is strategic. David's steps led him from the pasture to the palace, but in between, there was a giant to face and a cave to hide in. Both were necessary. The giant gave him victory. The cave gave him humility. Both steps were ordered. Don't despise the small or the silent steps. Those are the ones that shape your soul the most. You may feel like your progress is too slow, like you're taking one step forward and two steps back. But in God's economy, no movement is wasted. Even the backward steps are part of his plan. Sometimes he lets you step back so you can get a better perspective. Sometimes he lets you pause so you can regain your strength. Every step is still under his control. What looks like a setback to you may actually be a setup for something greater. When your steps are ordered by God, you don't have to compete or compare. You don't have to rush or panic. You understand that your pace is part of his plan. What he has for you won't miss you if you keep walking in obedience. Someone else's timeline doesn't determine yours. God's path for you is custom designed. You're not behind, you're right on schedule. The steps you're taking now are preparing the stage for what's coming next. There's peace in knowing that God orders your steps. It means you don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to have all the answers. Your responsibility is simply to keep walking. As long as you stay connected to the one who gives the orders, your direction is secure. You might not know where the next turn leads, but you can trust the one who mapped it out. Every step counts because every step reveals your faith. Faith isn't proven by your final destination. It's proven in your daily direction. It's in the morning you wake up discouraged, but still choose to trust. It's in the day you don't see results, but still keep moving. It's in the moments no one else sees, where you decide to take one more step. When quitting would be easier, God honors that kind of faith. He counts every tear, every trial, every time you keep walking, even when the path is unclear. When your steps are ordered, you start to realize that God's plan is not about arrival, but about alignment. He's not trying to get you somewhere quickly. He's trying to grow you deeply. He's developing your patience, your endurance, your reliance on him. Because when you finally reach what he promised, you'll have the character to handle it. So keep stepping, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet, even if it's hard. Every step counts when it's ordered by God. You're not wandering, you're walking in purpose. You're not lost, you're being led. And when you look back, you'll see that every hill, every valley, every twist in the road was necessary to bring you right where God intended you to be. Every step matters because every step is part of his divine design. Delay is not denial, it's preparation for purpose. So many of us mistake waiting for rejection, but God's timing is not punishment, it's precision. When God delays something in your life, it's not because he's forgotten you, it's because he's forming something in you. There are lessons that only the waiting room can teach. There are strengths that only patience can build. And there are blessings that only maturity can handle. If God gave you everything you asked for the moment you asked for it, it might destroy you before it develops you. Delay is one of God's greatest tools for transformation. It's the season where faith stops being a feeling, becomes a foundation. Anybody can trust God when the doors are swinging open and prayers are being answered left and right. But can you trust him when heaven is silent? Can you still believe when nothing seems to be moving? That's where real faith is proven. The delay doesn't mean God isn't working. It means He's working deeper. While you're waiting for the promise, God is preparing your heart to receive it. Look at Joseph. He had a dream as a teenager that he would rise to a place of influence, but it took years before that dream came to pass. He was betrayed, enslaved, imprisoned, all before he was promoted. From the outside, it looked like delay. But in God's timeline, it was development. Each stage was training Joseph for leadership. The pit taught him humility. The prison taught him stewardship. And the palace revealed his purpose. If Joseph had reached the palace too soon, he wouldn't have been ready to handle the pressure of power. The same is true for you. God's delay is developing your destiny. We often want the promise without the process, the crown without the cross, the reward without the refinement. But purpose requires preparation. God doesn't just prepare the blessing for you, He prepares you for the blessing. Delay is His way of making sure that when the opportunity comes, you're not overwhelmed by it. You may think you're ready, but God sees what's still missing: patience, discipline, character, compassion. He loves you too much to give you something prematurely, because a premature blessing can feel like a curse when you're not equipped to carry it. When God delays, He's not saying no. He's saying not yet. The waiting is a sacred space where heaven adjusts you for what's ahead. Sometimes He'll hold you still to protect you. Sometimes He'll hold you back to position you. The job that didn't call you back, the relationship that didn't last, the opportunity that fell through, they weren't denials. They were divine redirections. God was saying, if I let that happen now, it'll limit you later. Delay protects destiny. Moses had to wait 40 years in the wilderness before leading Israel out of Egypt. David waited over a decade after being anointed before he sat on the throne. Even Jesus waited 30 years before beginning His public ministry. If the Son of God Himself moved on heaven's schedule and not His own, what makes us think we should rush ours? God's delays are divine appointments dressed in disguise. While you're waiting for what's next, God is building what's necessary inside of you. The danger of misunderstanding delay is that frustration can turn into doubt. You start to question whether God still remembers you. You compare your progress to others and wonder why their doors are opening faster. But comparison is poison in the waiting room. Just because someone else's season has come doesn't mean yours has been canceled. Every calling has its own calendar. You don't need to compete. You need to trust what's yours will arrive right on time. And when it does, you'll realize the delay was actually mercy. Delay also reveals motives. When God makes you wait, it exposes whether you want His hand or His heart. Some people only serve God when He's blessing them. But true faith says, even if you don't do it now, I'll still trust you. God uses waiting to refine your worship, to strip away shallow expectations, and to deepen your dependence. In the delay, He's teaching you to love Him for who He is, not just for what He can do. The waiting season is where you learn to walk by faith, not by sight. It's where you discover that the silence of God is not the absence of God. Just because you can't hear Him doesn't mean He's not speaking. Sometimes His silence is the sound of strategy. While you're waiting for Him to move, He's moving pieces you can't see. Behind every delay, there's divine design. Sometimes the delay isn't even about you. It's about what's connected to you. God might be preparing people, places, and provisions to align perfectly with your arrival. If you show up too early, things won't be ready. If you show up too late, you'll miss the moment. So God delays you to synchronize heaven's timing with your purpose. What feels like a setback is really synchronization. When you start to see delay as preparation, frustration turns into faith. You begin to thank God for the waiting instead of resenting it. You stop asking, why me? And start declaring, prepare me. You realize that every no, every not yet, every closed door was God protecting something sacred. He's not withholding your blessing. He's making sure you don't waste it. One day, when the waiting ends and the promise manifests, you'll look back and understand why it took so long. You'll see that the lessons learned in delay became the wisdom that sustained your destiny. You'll thank God for not letting it happen when you thought you were ready, because the truth is, you weren't being delayed, you were being developed. So don't despise the delay. Don't curse the waiting season. God is not late. He's deliberate. His timing is perfect even when it doesn't align with your clock. The delay is not a denial. It's heaven saying, I'm getting you ready for something greater. And when preparation meets purpose, everything that was held up will be released at once. What took years to build will blossom in a moment, and you'll realize it was worth every second of the wait. Walk by faith, not by familiarity. This is one of the hardest lessons God teaches His children, because everything in our human nature wants security, predictability, and control. We like to know what's coming next. We like to plan it, map it out, and see it before we step into it. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith requires you to move before you see, to trust before you understand, and to step when there's no visible path in front of you. Familiarity keeps you safe. Faith pushes you forward. God will always call you out of the familiar, because comfort can become a cage that limits your destiny. When you walk by familiarity, you rely on what you already know, what you've already seen, and what you can already control. But walking by faith requires you to rely on what God knows, even when you don't. Familiarity says, I've been here before, so I know how this goes. Faith says, I've never been here before, but I trust the one who brought me. The two cannot coexist. You cannot step into the fullness of your calling while clinging to the comfort of your past. Think about Abraham. God told him, leave your country, your family, and your father's house, and go to a land I will show you. He didn't give him a map or an itinerary. God didn't tell him where the land was, what it looked like, or how long it would take to get there. Abraham had to move based on faith alone. He walked away from everything familiar because he trusted God's promise more than his own understanding. And because he walked by faith, God made him the father of nations. Familiarity would have kept him settled. Faith made him significant. God often disrupts what's familiar to develop your faith. That's why he sometimes shakes up your environment, your relationships, your routines, not to punish you, but to push you. When life feels uncertain, it's usually because God is shifting you into a new dimension. He can't take you higher if you insist on holding on to what's comfortable. Growth never happens in the familiar. The familiar keeps you repeating cycles. Faith creates transformation. Walking by faith doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you won't let fear make the final decision. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear rule your steps. When Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water, he defied everything familiar. He knew boats could float, but he'd never walked on water before. The moment he focused on the waves instead of the word, he began to sink. But as long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he did the impossible. That's what faith does. It allows you to stand where logic says you should sink. Familiarity, on the other hand, is deceptive. It feels safe, but it slowly suffocates growth. You start repeating patterns, staying in places that no longer challenge you, and surrounding yourself with people who only affirm what's comfortable instead of what's possible. Familiarity makes you settle for good enough when God called you for greater. You can't move in faith while standing on the shores of the familiar. At some point, you have to leave the boat and step into the unknown, trusting that if God said, "Come," the water will hold you. The danger of walking by familiarity is that it breeds spiritual complacency. You stop expecting God to do new things. You stop dreaming, stop stretching, stop praying bold prayers. You start living on yesterday's miracles and yesterday's faith. But God is always moving, always speaking, always calling His people into deeper trust. If you're still living off old instructions, you're missing new revelation. God's mercies are new every morning because faith is meant to be exercised daily, not occasionally. When you walk by faith, you learn to depend on divine direction rather than human logic. Sometimes God will ask you to do something that doesn't make sense. Give when you're in lack. Love when you've been hurt. Move when you're unprepared. Faith says, if God said it, that's enough. Familiarity says, let me calculate it first. But if you could calculate everything, you wouldn't need faith. Faith is the currency of heaven. It's what unlocks the supernatural in your natural life. Walking by faith also changes your language. You stop speaking from what you see and start declaring what you believe. Instead of saying, it doesn't look possible, you start saying, with God, all things are possible. Instead of saying, I don't see the way, you declare, God will make a way. Your words begin to align with heaven's reality, not earthly limitation. Faith doesn't deny facts. It just refuses to let facts define final outcomes. Faith is not blind. It sees further than the natural eye. Familiarity stops at what's visible. Faith sees what's promised. When you walk by faith, you begin to experience divine surprises. Doors you didn't expect open. People you didn't know you needed appear. And provision shows up right when you need it. That's because faith invites God to intervene. He responds to faith, not familiarity. But walking by faith also requires consistency. You can't take one step of faith on Sunday and retreat to the familiar on Monday. It's a lifestyle, a rhythm of daily surrender. It means waking up each morning and saying, God, I trust you with today, even if I don't know what it holds. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence. Even when the road feels rough, faith keeps walking. Even when prayers seem unanswered, faith keeps believing. If you only move when it makes sense, you'll miss the miracles that live in the mystery. God hides His greatest blessings behind the door of obedience, and the key is faith. Every major move of God in Scripture began with a step of faith. Noah building the ark, Moses raising his staff, Joshua marching around Jericho, Mary saying yes to carrying the Savior. None of it was familiar, but each act of faith changed history. So when God asks you to step out, don't let fear of the unfamiliar hold you back. Don't cling to what's comfortable when He's calling you to what's greater. The same God who called you out will sustain you as you walk. The ground may not look stable, but His word will hold you. You might not see the whole path, but as you move, the next step will appear. Walk by faith, not by familiarity, because faith will take you places comfort never could. It will lead you into purpose, into promise, into peace. And when you look back, you'll realize that every step of faith was worth it because it led you closer to the heart of God and into the fullness of who you were created to be. So now, as we bring this message home, hear me clearly. God is not asking you to have it all figured out. He's not waiting for you to be perfect, polished, or prepared. He's just waiting for you to align. Because when your steps align with his vision, your life begins to move in rhythm with heaven. You stop chasing after things and start attracting what belongs to your purpose. Every moment of your life, every step, every struggle, every silence has been leading you right here. You thought you were wandering, but you were walking. You thought you were delayed, but you were being developed. You thought you were forgotten, but you were being formed for greatness. God has not forgotten his promise over you. He's simply aligning your path to match your purpose. Some of you are in between vision and manifestation. You've seen it in your spirit, but you haven't held it in your hands yet. But don't you dare give up now. Keep walking, keep trusting, keep obeying. Because every step you take in faith brings you closer to fulfillment. Heaven is watching how you move when nothing makes sense. Heaven is recording every tear, every prayer, every moment you choose to keep walking instead of quitting. This is not the time to doubt. It's the time to align. It's time to stop fighting God's process and start flowing with his plan. If he said it, he'll perform it. If he started it, he'll finish it. If he ordered your steps, he'll sustain your strength. The same God who spoke vision into your heart will bring that vision to life. But he's waiting for your obedience, your surrender, your alignment. So stand up in your spirit today and declare, Lord, order my steps, not according to my emotions, not according to my fears, but according to your vision. I may not see the whole picture, but I trust the painter. I may not understand the path, but I trust the one who paved it, because I know that when my steps are aligned with your will, I cannot fail. And when that alignment comes, doors will open that no man can shut. Opportunities will find you. Peace will follow you. Purpose will overtake you. You won't have to chase success. Success will recognize divine alignment when it sees it. So keep walking, child of God. Keep believing, keep aligning, because your ordered steps are leading you to divine destiny. What God has prepared for you is worth every delay, every detour, and every tear. And when you finally step into the promise, you'll look back and say, every step was necessary, every season was intentional, and every moment was God aligning my life with his vision. Now lift your voice and declare, Lord, align my steps with your vision for my life, because the moment your feet match his will, your destiny becomes unstoppable.